Hello and welcome to Pulsecast, the podcast exploring the key trends in media technology. Today, we will talk about ISE 2025 with Owen Ellis, who is chairman of the AV user group. Thanks, Owen, very much for being with us today.
Thank you. Nice to speak to you.
Thanks. So first, Owen, can you tell us briefly about your role and your background as well?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the industry now. This is my 41st year. I joined the industry like most people by chance back in 1984. The first 15 or 16 years I worked on the supply side, mostly with what you would now call systems integration firms. Back in those days, they tended to do a lot more. They used to do dry hire, wet hire, event support, staging, production, as well as installation, service, and maintenance. But that was the kind of my background in the industry originally, and what gave me my grounding, I guess, across all the different aspects of the industry. Then I joined Morgan Stanley Investment Bank in 2000, and I was an end user then for about nearly 18 years. And by the end of that time, I was the global head of multimedia engineering. So I was responsible for all of their global standards in AV, all of the project implementation of AV systems around the world, and the maintenance of those systems. And it was during that time that I got involved in this group, the AV user group, when it only existed in London in its very early days. That was around 2002, 2003, I think, when I first joined. And I got involved in running it as a volunteer in 2010 and decided that the value that it bore needed to be spread wider. So I decided to take it international. And I ended up doing that between 2012 and 2018. And it was at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, that I left Morgan Stanley to run the group full time. So, you know, we'd got the revenues through the sponsorship to a level where it could support my salary and I could do it as a full-time role. So I've been doing that full time ever since the beginning of 2018. And in the last 5 years, I've also opened a specialist group for AV consultants. So in a very similar vein, we're supporting AV consultants in the industry through the meetings that we run and so on. So that's my background and kind of what I'm doing today, running both of those groups.
Thanks, Owen. And you have attended the show ISE for many years now. If you look at the last few years, but even all the time you've attended the show for, how do you think the show has changed? If it has changed, or in the last few years, any things that have changed in the last few years that stand out for you?
I guess if you look across the last 10 years, the biggest change has been the growth of the show. It's obviously a huge show now, and it's probably considered the #1 audiovisual trade show globally. And I think rightfully so. And obviously in that growth, the need to move from its traditional home at the RAI in Amsterdam to the Fira in Barcelona, where they now have, you know, the space to grow the show even bigger, have even, you know, more exhibitors, larger number of attendees and so on. That's probably been the biggest change that I've seen with the show in that time.
Yeah, thank you, Owen. And they're expecting, I think, the show to grow this year as well. What do you think has driven this growth from your perspective?
Just the continued growth of the industry as a whole. Obviously, the pandemic gave the industry an injection, particularly with the use of video platforms, which have now pretty much become a part of everybody's everyday life, which it probably wasn't pre-pandemic. That gave the industry a huge injection. And although many of the trade shows obviously suffered attendance, and probably exhibitor numbers during and immediately after the pandemic, I think we're well past that now, and we're seeing the exhibitor and attendee numbers back up to what they were pre-pandemic. And I wouldn't be surprised if this year at ISE they surpass their pre-pandemic numbers. So yeah, it's really the continued growth of the industry, the continued developments in technology, many of which you'll already be familiar with, continue to make it an exciting industry and an attractive industry, and continue to see the growth.
Thanks, Owen. And if we look at this year's show, what trends do you think will dominate the show this year?
I don't know that I'm necessarily expecting there to be anything that's going to dominate the show, unless obviously something gets revealed that we're not currently aware of. That's always quite nice when you turn up and something new gets revealed and creates a big buzz at the show. But certainly, I think the trends that we've seen in recent years, developments in LED display technology, AI, sustainability, and to a certain extent, the convergence with the broadcast sector that we've seen since the pandemic, I think we will see to be continual themes at the show. But I don't necessarily know that I'm expecting anything to particularly dominate this year.
Yeah, and these are the themes and trends I'm hearing a lot. First and foremost, AI. Everyone is talking about that, and it's been a buzzword last year, and it will continue to be a big trend this year as well. And then, as you say, LED technology, sustainability, and that convergence, which we will talk about as well. And as I know you're not an AV user anymore, but as a chairman of the AV user group, what do you think will be the main priorities of AV users at the show, their main business priorities from what you're hearing from the market?
I think the one common theme across our membership is generally knowledge of developing technologies. Because they all work in very varied market verticals, from retail to hospitality to higher education and corporate enterprise, and they all have different ongoing strategies within their individual organizations. So some might be looking at building a new production studio, others might be looking at doing an upgrade to their corporate signage platforms, others might be looking at a conference room refresh. They'll all turn up at the show with a different focus to each other, but generally the main theme that our members come to the show for is to be up to date in developing technologies. And that's one of the reasons that we run the speed pitch event that we run on the Monday afternoon, which gives exhibiting manufacturers an opportunity to pitch new products that they're revealing at the show to our members before the show opens on the Tuesday. Certainly that seems to be one of the most attractive events to our members coming to the show, because it kind of sets them up for the week and gives them an opportunity to work out which of the exhibiting manufacturers are the ones they really need to go and see based on what they're launching.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also one of the reasons you go to trade shows as well, right? It's also to network, to learn from others. I think it's a very important part of it. So nice to hear about the event as well. And if we go back to that convergence between broadcast and AV you mentioned before, how is that evolving? What have you seen in the last few years?
I guess the main thing that we've witnessed is the use of broadcast production technologies and techniques within the standard meeting platforms. So coming out of the pandemic, although everybody was, day to day was using Microsoft Teams and Zoom and Google and the other platforms that were available, a lot of the higher end meetings, particularly those that had a hybrid nature or a remote nature to them, we saw a greater demand, certainly coming down from senior management within our members' organisations, to produce higher quality events and to do things with the production techniques that made the events more engaging to watch as a viewer, to hold their attention better during the presentations and so on. And we saw a huge uptick in the interest in and use of broadcast techniques and tools in that field. And I think that's really driven this really big convergence between the two industries since the pandemic. And we see that reflected on the show floor at ISE. They have a broadcast area now on the floor.
Yeah, there is the AV broadcast hall, which is always interesting to look at because it's one of the reflection of this convergence as well. And
I think it will also be interesting to see, there's a couple of other very large manufacturers. I'm thinking the likes of Panasonic and Sony as an example that have always traditionally exhibited at ISE and won't be exhibiting in that AV broadcast area of the show. But it'll be interesting to see how much of their broadcast technology they bring to show at ISE this year. I think in previous years, we've not seen that as much, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2025.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point because even last year, I think there were some suppliers who you could consider broadcast technology vendors who were not exhibiting in the hall. And I think some of them have moved to the hall this year, but not everyone is there. So it's a very good point. And in terms of broadcast technology vendors, as a chairman of the AV user group, but do you have any suggestions for broadcast technology vendors exhibiting at the show or attending the show if they are communicating or if they are talking with AV users for the first time? Some of them might, because maybe they've traditionally attended only broadcast shows like IBC or NAB. Do you have any tips for them?
I guess it's difficult because they'll all probably have their own reasons for exhibiting at a show like this, and without knowing what those reasons are, it's difficult to offer advice. But if I was to say anything to them, it would be listen. Certainly, the experience that I've had over the past couple of years with this convergence is people will often form or have a predetermined concept of what the requirement from that sector is, and it's not always the case. And I think the most important thing is to listen to what the user's asking for or telling you they're looking for, and kind of take the conversation from there, really.
Yeah, and I guess that's good advice generally, because the truth sometimes can be counterintuitive, and you want to listen to your customer. Any tips for anyone attending the show for the first time? I know there are new people every year. We said that the show is growing, so you've attended the show for a long time. Any tips for people attending the show for the first time?
Book a foot massage at the end of each day. It's a tough one because we all go for different reasons. We were talking earlier about my reasons for going to the show are very much about networking. It's not about the technology anymore. My members' reasons for going for the show is very much about the technology still. So again, it really depends what you're going for. I would say avoid the opening time. The doors do get very busy, although I have to say over the 3 or 4 years that the show's been at Barcelona, that has improved each year from the first year. The first year was horrendous with the queues.
I
So
remember.
yeah, I would definitely recommend avoiding opening time.
That's good advice. So thanks very much, Owen, for being with us today, and thanks for sharing all the insights you shared.
You're welcome. Nice to talk to you, Lorenzo.